When you see the name Sebring International Raceway, you most notably automatically think about the 12 Hours of Sebring, IMSA's second race of the season and the second race of the Endurance Cup. Trans Am would kick off their season at Sebring. IndyCar would test at Sebring alongside the road to Indy Series. They would test there and even race there. A lot of sports car races are held there, and other race cars test there, and even some drag racing. But in this episode, we're going to be talking about Formula One racing at Sebring, which took place on December 12th, 1959. With that being said, let's begin. The 1959 United States Grand Prix was not only the first and only race in Sebring, but the first ever Formula One race ever held in America. Sebring was one of 11 tracks that Formula One raced at in the United States. Back in the middle of the 20th century, Sebring was a military air base that was used during World War II at the Heavy Bomber Training School for B-17 Flying Fortress and B-24 Liberator pilots called Hendricks Field for 5 years from 1941 to 1946, honoring First Lieutenant Laird Wolfruff Hendricks. After World War II ended, the facility became a racetrack and was opened on December 31st, 1950. As for this race, the 1959 United States Grand Prix at Sebring was the ninth and final race of the 1959 Formula One season. Coming into this race, and for the first time since 1951, there were three drivers going for the World Championship. Jack Brabham leading the standings by 3 points, a 5.5 point lead ahead of Sir Sterling Moss. Moss's point scoring coming to Sebring was 25.5, a point and a half ahead of Tony Brooks, who had clutch issues before the Italian Grand Prix went underway. Scored 23 points coming to Sebring. Not only was there a driver championship battle, but there was also a constructors championship battle between Cooper Climax and Ferrari, 7 points apart. As for those three drivers, neither of them raced at the 1959 Indianapolis 500. However, Jack Brabham won 2 races at Monaco and Aintree, which is the British Grand Prix, and stood at the podium 5 times but retired in the Germain Grand Prix at Avas due to transmission issues, finishing 11th after 15 laps and 12th place in the Portuguese Grand Prix at Monsanto. Tony Brooks won 2 races at Reims, which was the French Grand Prix, and at Avas, German Grand Prix. 3 podiums with a second place at Monaco and retired at Zandvoort, the Dutch Grand Prix, due to an oil leak after 42 laps, finishing in 12th in a 24th place, last place finish, at Aintree at the British Grand Prix, due to ignition issues after 13 laps. Sterling Moss is an interesting case coming to Sebring for a championship, a long shot, a dark horse. Sir Sterling Moss has 2 wins at Monsanto, the Portuguese Grand Prix, and Monza, the Italian Grand Prix, and 3 podiums in Aintree, British Grand Prix, and coming to Sebring, and those 2 were the last 2 races. However, Sir Sterling Moss would retire after 81 laps at Monaco due to transmission issues, finishing in 7th. A retirement at Zandvoort, Dutch Grand Prix, due to gearbox issues, finishing 11th after 62 laps. Originally, Sir Sterling Moss finished 8th place at Reims, the French Grand Prix. However, he would be disqualified after receiving a push start in his British racing partnership BRM P25. Sir Sterling Moss pushed his car hard, overcoming a failing gearbox, claiming a new lap record. Now that we got some stories coming to Sebring, let's get to the race. The race was organized by promoter Alec Oman, who was one of the first members of the Sports Car Club America and who, after seeing the first 24 Hours Le Mans, developed the 12 Hours of Sebring at home in America. Since this was the first ever United States Grand Prix, 6 American drivers entered this race. 5 of them came with European outfits. Harry Schell with Cooper Climax, Phil Hill with Ferrari, Bob Stead with Connaught Alta, George Constantine with Cooper Climax, Harry Blanchard with Porsche, and Phil Cade with Maserati. There was also one single machine from Indianapolis. 1959 champion Roger Ward, who would also win the 1962 Indy 500, drove his Curtis Craft Offenhauser. Originally, the championship contenders were supposed to start 1, 2, 3, with the lineup being Sir Sterling Moss, Jack Brabham, and Tony Brooks. However, overnight, Harry Schell, who was the first ever American driver in Formula One, was given the 3rd place starting position next to Sir Sterling Moss and Jack Brabham due to his 3:05.2 lap time that got him to the front row, coming at the tail end of the session because nobody noticed him, which did not count. His previous best time was 3:11.2, which would be good enough for 11th place. On race day, there was some drama in the morning before the race started because of qualifying. Ferrari and other race teams loudly protested the move to the point it became a loud shouting match while the Star-Spangled Banner was still going on. The promoters maintained their position and Harry Schell started from 3rd. But it turns out that Harry Schell had cut the track, which is what gave him such a fast time. During his qualifying run, just beyond the MG bridge and before the S's was a sharp right turn that apparently led nowhere. During his qualifying run, just beyond the MG bridge and before the S's was a sharp right turn that apparently led nowhere, Harry Schell found, however, that it connected with the end of the warehouse straight by passing the entire straight in the warehouse hairpin. He had secretly cut across and came back on his course during the lull in traffic and cut 6 seconds off his time. The truth of Harry Schell's qualifying run came clean after the race. It didn't help him in the race, however. He was 8th after the first lap and retired after only 5 laps, finishing 15th due to clutch problems. Harry Schell raced in Formula 1 for 11 years, raced in 55 Grand Prix and finished 2 podiums. Unfortunately, on May 13th, 1960, during a rainy practice session for the non-championship international trophy event at Silverstone, Harry Schell was driving at near 100 miles per hour when his car slid into the mud just off of Abbey Curve. He lost the wheel and subsequently control of the car. His Cooper spun through the air, pierced through the safety barrier, and saw a brick wall collapse on impact. Harry Schell, of course, was not wearing a safety harness, so he had half flopped out of the car by the time all said and done. His head had smacked against the wall, breaking his neck and killing Schell instantly. Harry Schell was 38 years old. As for the racing, Phil Cade and his Maserati did not start the race. While the race was underway, championships were already implicated. Tony Brooks was rammed from behind by Wolfgang von Trips in the very first turn, and his 2-minute pit stop to repair damage killed his pursuit of the title. Luckily, Tony Brooks continued the race and finished in 3rd. Bob Sid would be out due to the accident of the opening lap and retired. British driver Alan Stacey and his Lotus MK16 would retire after 2 laps due to clutch issues. 3 more drivers were out of the race on lap 5. 2 American drivers, George Constantine, was out due to his Cooper T45 being overheated, and Harry Schell was out due to his Cooper T51 having transmission issues, like I brought that up earlier. During lap 5, championships were implicated once more. Championship contender and race leader Sir Sterling Moss, who had a 10-second lead with the championship rival, Jack Brabham, was in second, with a broken gearbox suffering transmission issues, ending his chances of winning the race and championship hopes. Jack Brabham got the championship, but he would have to hold on for the rest of the race in the lead to win at Sebring. While Jack Brabham dominated the race, there were more drivers retiring from the race due to mechanical issues. Brazilian driver Fritz Diore would retire his Tech Mech F415 due to an oil leak after 6 laps. American driver Phil Hill would retire his Ferrari Dyno 246 after 8 laps due to clutch issues. Argentinian driver Alejandro de Tomasa would retire his Cooper T43 Oscar after 13 laps due to brake issues. Roger Ward, who was the only driver that drove an Offenhauser not raced, retired after 20 laps due to clutch issues. 2 British drivers named Roy Salvadori, who drove a Cooper T45 Maserati, and Cliff Allison, who drove a Ferrari 246 Dyno, both suffered from transmission issues and retired after 23 laps. Wolfgang von Trips, who was involved in an earlier incident with Tony Brooks, would retire his Ferrari 246 Dyno after 30 laps due to engine issues. 6 drivers would finish the race. Jack Brabham was dominating the race and had the race in the bag. He was so dominant, he slowed down so Bruce McLaren could catch up to him, but on the final lap of the 1959 Formula 1 World Championship season, Jack Brabham's car began to sputter just 400 yards from the finish line. Just 400 miles from the finish line, he had run out of gas due to his own insistence that the Cooper team start him in only partial fuel tank to maintain a quicker pace. Bruce McLaren, who was teammates with Jack Brabham, slowed behind Jack Brabham, leaving the Australian frantically waving his Kiwi teammate by and praying that Maurice Trittigent wouldn't bypass both drivers on the final lap. Thankfully, things went as planned for Bruce. Bruce McLaren would win the 1959 United States Grand Prix at Sebring, and Jack Brabham would win the 1959 Formula 1 World Championship, finishing in 4th place while pushing his car to finish the race. Maurice Trittigent finished in 2nd, and Tony Brooks finished in 3rd. At the time, Bruce McLaren was the youngest Formula 1 winner in history. He was 22 years and 104 days old, and just like that, the very first Formula 1 in the United States of America took place. Despite some exacting and exciting moments in that race, the race was a financial failure and some disastrous media coverage. There were some hopes for a second Formula 1 race in Sebring in 1960, but that never happened. It was reported that Sterling Moss was particularly displeased with the track, largely because of the local used the international event as an excuse to jack up prices of things like hotels and foods. Furthermore, the exciting race almost ended in financial despair. Alec Ullman only just managed to break even due to a small crowd. 15,000 fans attended the Formula 1 race, about 40,000 fans attended the 1959 12 Hours of Sebring, which is partially since the event's purse was a whopping $15,000, including a $6,000 prize for the winner. Back in the early days of Formula One was still a smaller operation that relied upon race promoters to generate and distribute funds, which were often small. At the 1960 12 Hours of Sebring, Alec Ullman announced that there will not be another Formula One race at Sebring. He was interested in bringing Formula One to Southern California. Eventually, Formula One would race at Riverside for the 1960 United States Grand Prix. That will do it for another episode of Racing Stories. If there was any information I missed or got wrong, please respectfully tell me in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Ian the Motorsports Man, signing off. Goodbye, everybody.